Last night, my wife, who I've been married to for 7 years, had a relaxing evening. While I was switching between watching sports and doing some tasks, I noticed she started drinking and eventually passed out on the couch. When I tried to help her, her smartwatch buzzed with a message from a friend of mine. We weren't close, just sports buddies from our teenage years. The messages hinted at flirting, and she openly asked for closeness while drunk. Feeling betrayed, I couldn't bring myself to talk to her and spent the night in shock. Now I'm contemplating ending the relationship, feeling like all the love I had for her is gone. I've invested a lot, not just as a partner, but as a person, and discovering her deceit makes me question myself. I'm considering quietly kicking her out, changing the locks, and not saying anything. I'm also thinking of confronting the friend who was involved. My house is owned by my parents, so she won't get it when they pass away. I feel lost and don't know what to do. And I'm even considering not saying anything and just making her leave. I'm in a dark place right now, and I shared my feelings with 2 dog walkers who advised against drinking to cope. I need to express my gratitude to her because I was on a destructive path. At that point, I threw away the vodka, reached out to a friend, and he offered me a place to stay. Despite him being at work, he shared the spare key to his place. In our small town of around 15,000 people, he wasn't far away. When I got to his place, I sat on his couch, trying to regain my composure. Throughout the morning, my wife bombarded me with texts and calls, wondering where I was, as my work van was in the driveway and I was nowhere to be found. I texted her back, explaining a fake issue with the van's engine, and she seemed to accept it with a simple okay. When my friend returned from work around 5 o'clock, I'd opened up to him about everything and sought his advice. I also warned him not to share anything about the friend called Jacket Holder, because I wanted to deal with him later by exposing his actions, not through physical violence. Despite people saying he did nothing wrong, he initiated flirtatious contact with my wife. I don't understand why he messaged her in the first place, considering they hardly knew each other. My friend suggested I maintain a low profile, consult with a lawyer, and explore my options, which I did. Today, he dropped me off at home around 6 o'clock a.m., utterly exhausted. When I arrived home, my wife seemed suspicious and bombarded me with questions about work. I asked her why she was so concerned, and she mentioned noticing my flask and lunch bag left in the front passenger seat. Sensing that something was amiss, I was about to lie, but I was too fatigued to put on a facade. I admitted that something was indeed wrong. I explained that while putting her to bed last night, I saw a message on her smartwatch, read it, and discovered her unfaithfulness. She went from a person with a sense of power to a scared individual within seconds. I confronted her about begging that person for closeness, mentioning her claim of being good at keeping secrets, and I read all their messages. She began crying, and I walked away heading upstairs for a shower. When I came back out, she was sitting on the top stair, still crying, and immediately began making excuses. She said she was drunk, vulnerable, and had never done anything like that before. She also claimed that he initiated the conversation and that it didn't mean anything. She insisted she wasn't going to follow through with it, echoing what others had said. However, she didn't try to blame me, perhaps because she knew I would kick her out if she did. I told her I wanted a divorce and asked her to leave the house within a month. She's now in the spare room, and I've been mostly ignoring her, responding with scowls and shaking my head when she talks. I don't want to hear what she has to say. She spent the night in the spare room, and I haven't spoken or texted with her today. If I'm lucky, she might be gone when I return from work, but I doubt my luck is that good. I discussed the situation with my parents, and surprisingly, my mother insisted I shouldn't throw her out onto the streets because they are close. We've been together for almost 11 years. My mother argued that it was just words and that we should work it out like adults, emphasizing that my wife hadn't actually done anything. She took my wife's side over mine, which surprised me. I'm concerned that my mother's opposition might complicate matters. It's my house when my parents pass, and since I did nothing wrong, I'm not leaving. this could potentially turn into a difficult situation. I scheduled an appointment with a divorce lawyer for next week to discuss my options. Until then, I plan to continue ignoring my soon-to-be ex-wife. I doubt she'll admit anything further, and now I'll never know if she was an excellent liar or just talking to gain his support for an affair. Apologies for the delay in the update. I had the chance to write it now as I'm finishing work. Back to the grind, I suppose. It's been 20 days since I discovered my wife's attempt to cheat on me with my friend, and the situation has become unbearable. I gave her a month to leave, and she has been sleeping in the spare room. However, it's evident that she has no intention of leaving, especially after influencing my mother. She doesn't have a place to go, but that's not my concern. I've consulted with my divorce lawyer multiple times and am in the process of preparing a divorce petition and serving her with divorce papers. I've also opened a separate bank account and taken half of the balance from our joint account. The atmosphere in the house has become tense, and the living room has become a sort of neutral zone as both of us spend most of our time in our respective rooms. I've intentionally been working late to minimize interaction with her. I've been completely ignoring her, but I started implementing the 180 method, which advises being civil albeit somewhat distant. It has helped me avoid feeling like a monster who refuses to acknowledge her existence, which was the wrong approach, and I ended up feeling like the one who had wronged her, which was not the case. The only time I broke from the 180 was when I walked into the bathroom last week, and she was sitting on the floor crying. I helped her up and gave her a comforting hug, although it was more of a there gesture than a loving embrace. The sad part is that I'm so suspicious of her now that I wouldn't put it past her to stage a performance. This toxic environment is affecting my thinking, and she keeps insisting she'll do anything to save the marriage and prove it was just a foolish mistake. I mentioned a lie detector test, although I don't intend to actually have one. I simply wanted to gauge her reaction. She initially agreed to take a lie detector test, but later approached me with her tablet, discussing potential inaccuracies and false readings due to her anxiety disorder. I couldn't help but laugh, not a normal chuckle, but a childish giggle. It seems she's willing to do anything to save the marriage except undergo a lie detector test, which is intriguing. However, it doesn't matter anymore. As I mentioned in my previous post, all the love I had for her vanished when I read those hurtful things. I no longer see her as my true love or someone I can trust with my life. I see her as trash that needs to be removed before it stinks up the place. After exposing Jacket Holder to our friend group a few weeks ago, he has been a topic of conversation. It's safe to say he's lost all his friends among us and has been completely isolated. I attempted to contact him a few times, but he refused to answer and eventually blocked my number. I have no sympathy for that little rat. I hope it was worth it. I've had numerous conversations with my mother about this situation. During a heated argument, I asked her why she was taking my wife's side, wanting to know if there was something she wasn't telling me. Was she expecting us to live as roommates, pretending nothing happened? It seemed absurd to me. My mother explained that she has always seen my wife as the daughter she never had but always wanted. My mother had an unborn daughter before I was born, which has haunted her. She attached herself to my wife since we got together, and they share a close bond. Since my wife doesn't have family or many friends with busy lives, my mother finds it unacceptable to throw her out, especially during a pandemic. My mother tried to reach a compromise, suggesting we revisit the situation in 3 or 4 months and encouraging us to try couples counseling before giving up. I'm unwilling to do that, as the thought of spending Christmas under the same roof as my wife makes me feel sick. She always wants to do it right, and it would be a complete disaster. My father, on the other hand, is a quiet and reserved man. My mother's opinion has always held more weight in our household. Some people have criticized me, calling me selfish and spoiled because the house isn't mine, and I have no right to make demands. However, it has now come down to a choice between my wife and me for my parents. If it comes to that, I'm prepared to walk out the door and never return. I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror with self-respect, and someone needs to keep their word in this situation. If I do leave, a friend has offered me a place to stay for a few weeks until I get back on my feet. But if I do walk out that door, I'll cut ties with my parents. They may see it as me giving up on them without trying to fix things, but I see it as them choosing someone who broke my heart over me. The logistics of this, once I'm gone, are unclear, with my wife staying there and my mother and father taking care of her while their own child goes off alone. Regarding the house, my parents allowed us to move in a year after our wedding, presenting it as a belated wedding gift, although that was just the talk at the time. Their plan was always to move out and have us move in. I've invested tens of thousands in it over the years, but that's beside the point. I have daydreams of leaving everything behind, starting fresh in a new place, but I have nowhere else to go. I've lived in this town my entire life, and it's all I know. Am I being too harsh? I'm ready to sever ties with my parents, but I feel torn. Why should I be the one to lose everything and everyone? I tried to be a good person, believing that good things happen to good people. But now I'm starting to doubt myself. Perhaps I'm not as good as I thought, and maybe I deserve everything that's happening. On Wednesday, December 2nd, I no longer consider that house my home. I saw on the calendar that my wife had a hospital appointment with her eye doctor. So I used that time as an opportunity to gather my belongings and move out, which I did. After arranging my things, I left the house keys on the kitchen table, along with the divorce papers I received from the lawyer last week, and departed. I've blocked both my wife and mother's numbers, and any future communication with my wife will be through my lawyer. As for my current living situation, I'm staying with a friend for a week or two, and hopefully I'll secure my own rental place before Christmas. It's been a few weeks. It's been a while since I last spoke to my parents. Our last conversation was through text messages where I tried to explain in detail the hurtful things my wife said to Jacket Holder and why it deeply affected me. I expressed my doubts that it was her first time doing such things, particularly with the "I'm good at keeping secrets" comment. My mother responded by saying she couldn't talk to me when I was in this state and needed me to cool off. She attempted to call me a few days ago, but I ignored her call and blocked her number. I feel profoundly let down by my parents, and at this point, it feels almost worse than the initial betrayal by my wife. Right now, I doubt if I'll ever speak to them again. During times of difficulty, you expect your family to be a source of strength to support you as the wronged party. Unfortunately, my parents have shown weakness. They've made me feel like I'm the one at fault, that I'm overreacting, and that I'm tearing the family apart. Well, I'm not. I didn't ask them to move mountains for me. I only wanted them to help me remove my cheating wife from the house. They made their choice, and my father also had a chance to stand up for me but didn't. You make your choices, and you live with them, I suppose. In response to comments from my previous posts, some people have accused me of giving up too easily, looking for a way out, and not truly loving my wife because I didn't try harder to salvage the marriage. However, that's not accurate. I loved my wife more than anyone else on this planet, and her betrayal devastated me. We all have our boundaries, and when those boundaries are crossed, things change irreversibly. When I read those hurtful texts, something inside me changed. I fell out of love with her, like waking up from a spell in a movie. Anything attempted after that would just delay the inevitable. I'm curious about the dynamics of my parents' relationship with my wife now that I'm gone. Will they continue to support her, knowing it has strained their relationship with their son? As for me, I have aspirations to travel. My wife disliked flying, so most of our vacations were in southern England, places like Newtoa, Cornwall, and Devon. It would be fantastic to travel abroad again. The last time I was overseas was at the age of 20 for a friend's trip to Greece, 13 years ago. I'd love to explore some parts of America once this pandemic settles down. That's essentially my story. This will be my final post as I don't want to overstay my welcome, and I believe I shared everything I needed to. If you want updates on my journey down the line, feel free to send me a direct message, and I'll do my best to keep you in the loop. Thanks for reading. Ended by. Fast forward to Wednesday, May 26th, 2021. It's been over 7 months since I first posted on Reddit. I thought I was done seeking advice as I had made my decisions and acted on them. However, a phone call this morning has pulled me back into the mess. I've relocated 15 miles away, changed my phone number, and continued with the process of divorcing my wife. She has ignored requests from my divorce lawyer to cooperate, causing delays. We're now in the process of seeking an official court order for her to be served. This morning, I received a call from my friend informing me that my dad wanted to reach out because my mother is unwell. He asked if it was okay to share my new number, and I agreed. My dad called to inform me that my mother is in the hospital in stable, but not great condition. This was a shock since I haven't heard my dad's voice in a long time, and he sounded emotional. He explained that my mother really wants to see me, so he requested that I meet him at the hospital and visit her with him tonight. I agreed, and we arranged to meet outside the hospital. I decided to leave work early as I couldn't concentrate, and I'm now anxious, questioning if I've made the right choice. I fear I might get drawn back into the chaos I walked away from. I've never felt this nervous before, and the lack of control I have over the situation is causing my mind to wander in various directions. It feels like I'm entering a burning building blindfolded, not knowing where the exits are. Why does she want to talk to me? Now has she had a change of heart? Unless she's also had a personality transplant while in there, I find that unlikely. Will my wife be there? I have no interest in ever seeing her again. I'm still angry about what transpired with them, and the way they took my cheating wife's side over mine. I've been going back and forth in my head about going at all, but I will go. I was also thinking about seeing if she wanted to speak over the phone instead, but I'm not sure if she would do that, or even if she's well enough. I feel like the bad guy here, and that I might have caused this from walking away. How would you handle this? On Saturday, May 29th, I did end up going to the hospital. On Wednesday night, after much deliberation, I was on the verge of backing out at the last minute as my courage wavered. But I needed closure and knew I'd regret it if I didn't go. When I arrived at the hospital's parking lot, I couldn't help but feel paranoid, half expecting my wife to jump out from behind a bush or something. I met my dad at the entrance, and it was quite awkward as he tried to hug me, but I declined. I made it clear that if my wife had any presence here, I would turn and leave. He'd assured me she wasn't around, and we proceeded to the ward where my mother was. When I saw my mother, I was shocked at her appearance. She seemed to have been through a lot. I've never seen her look so frail. She had a severe black eye along with bruises and discoloration on one side of her face. She had a bad fall, breaking 2 ribs, shattering her elbow, and hitting one side of her head on the ground. So elbow, ribs, then her head in that order. As she saw me, her expression changed from being zombified to more animated. She told me how much she missed me and wasn't sure if she'd ever see me again. I reminded her that if she truly wanted to reach me, she could have. We had a conversation about what exactly had happened, how she was down for a few hours before my dad found her, and her determination to mend bridges with me. I brought up my wife and the ongoing divorce process, explaining that I had been pushing for it, but she seemed to be ignoring the letters. I asked if my wife was still in the house, and my mom admitted she was, which made me disgusted. She began to say that my wife is lost without me and is not doing well. It became clear to me that nothing had fundamentally changed. She hadn't had an epiphany or gained a new perspective. She merely wanted things to return to how they were. She insisted that the house is still my home and always will be, but I expressed my disinterest. It holds no meaning to me anymore and is filled with negative memories. I stayed for less than an hour in total. When I left, I informed my parents that if I want to get in touch, I will do so, but they shouldn't expect a quick phone call. My dad asked if I would keep in touch with him when he walked me out, and I said I would, though I'm uncertain if it's the right decision. Time will tell. Once I returned home, my emotions were a roller coaster, shifting from sadness to anger. However, I'm relieved I went. I couldn't help but think about my wife and what she once meant to me. The pain remains. When I reflect on the events of the past 7 months, it's hard to believe they're real. The speed at which everything fell apart was astonishing. Life moves quickly, especially when you're not paying attention, and I wasn't. It was pure luck that I discovered her attempted infidelity, just a cosmic coincidence. I never noticed the signs or connected the dots. I only saw something on her watch that shattered my life. Now I'm aware that it wasn't the only instance. I feel it deep in my heart. I recognize her for what she is and feel only contempt, not love. It seems she stole the best years of my life. When I reminisce about the good times, they are tainted. They feel like someone else's life, not mine. My friend suggested I see a therapist to help process my emotions and experiences. It's something I'm considering as I feel a bit broken inside. The last 7 months have been the most challenging in my life, but I prefer this truth to ignorance. I'm saddened by how it all unfolded, but you can't choose how someone betrays you. I suppose the lesson is to learn from it. I remember hearing that loyalty is one of the most underrated character traits, and I now understand its significance. Perhaps it's undervalued because you rarely discover someone's true loyalty until they betray it. It's not something you encounter every day. But now more than ever, I appreciate its importance. On Tuesday, July 20th, I'm now in the final stages of divorcing my wife. She signed the divorce papers and sent them to my divorce lawyer, so only formalities remain. She conveyed a message through my dad expressing her regret for not allowing me to move on, thinking she could salvage the relationship. However, she now understands that it's not possible, and she must move forward for her own well-being. I thanked her for realizing this. She doesn't want anything in the divorce and plans to move out of the house once she's on her feet. I'm okay with that. Concerning my mother, I haven't spoken to her yet, but my dad mentioned she's doing better after leaving the hospital and regaining some normalcy. I don't know how things will turn out between us, but I've suggested that if the house is to become mine, they should transfer it to my name to provide me with some security. After that, we can work on rebuilding bridges. We'll see how it goes. My most significant challenges lie in my mind and overcoming all that has transpired. The human brain is a remarkable yet frightening thing. For instance, I can still vividly remember the taste of truffles. I ate them at my grand's house when I was about 5, vomited, and never touched truffles again. Yet, I can still recall the taste of those things 30 years later. What I'm trying to say is that I don't want to hold on to thoughts, feelings, and opinions about everything that happened for 30 years. I don't want to become one of those older individuals who have had all the goodness knocked out of them by life's pain. You often hear about those people, how they used to be good, kind, or funny, but life's experiences transformed them into someone they never wished to become. All that remains is pain. I don't want to be that person. I need to release this pain before it consumes me. I've started therapy and talked to a psychiatrist, both over the phone and in person, which has been quite helpful in opening up about everything, if only for a short time. My psychiatrist shared something with me that made a deep impact. When I was lamenting about my best years being behind me, she said, "Your best years are the years you've got left." I believe she meant that the past is gone, it only exists in your mind. But the present is real, and you can choose to make the most of it instead of dwelling on a past that exists only in your memories. It's a phrase I intend to remember when I'm feeling down. As I mentioned in a previous post, I've been wanting to travel, and that's finally becoming a reality. My friend has committed to joining me, and we're booking a flight to New York at the beginning of October for a week. I'm really looking forward to it, especially seeing New York during the autumn season, reminiscent of the movie You've Got Mail. I hope this marks the start of many travel adventures in my late 30s. That's the plan, at least. What I can say is that for the first time in a long while, I wake up with hope in my heart and walk with a spring in my step. If that's not progress, I don't know what is. On Wednesday, October 27th, it's been a year since my first Reddit post, so I thought it's fitting to provide one final update and bring this chapter to a close. Firstly, I'm now officially divorced. It feels like a burden has been lifted, but it's also a clear end to what was almost a third of my life. I unexpectedly saw my ex-wife for the first time since last December when I entered a shop in the town center about a month ago. She was exiting the store just as I was entering. Even with masks on, I recognized her immediately, and we made eye contact. She mumbled something that I couldn't quite make out. We exchanged a few seconds of silence, and then I walked inside. As I roamed the store, I was overwhelmed by a deep sense of sadness and had to take a moment to compose myself. It goes to show that sometimes one look can transport you back to square one. Do I miss her? No, I miss the person I believed she was. But that person no longer exists if she ever did. I don't wish her something bad or hardship. I simply refuse to carry hatred in my heart any longer. It ultimately burdens only me. Regarding Heather, I'd also learned from a friend's girlfriend that a couple of years back, she was certain she saw my ex-wife outside a pub in the city being affectionate with another guy. She never mentioned it to me or my friend at the time because she wasn't entirely sure it was her and didn't want to interfere. I'm quite upset with her because having that information years ago would have saved me a lot of heartache. It's not definitive proof, but it would have allowed me to confirm whether she was out that night, and it could have spared me much pain. Now I understand why I've never really liked her. One of the reasons my friend and I decided to book a flight to New York in October, besides wanting to experience the city during autumn, was the anticipation that the travel ban between the USA and UK for fully vaccinated travelers would be lifted in September. Unfortunately, it was postponed until November 8th, putting our plans in limbo. Additionally, my friend can't take time off work until the new year, so if I decide to go, I'll have to go alone, even though we both wanted to go together. I'm leaning towards waiting until the new year to go with him, but I'll need to consider it more thoroughly. This pandemic consistently throws curveballs, so I can't complain or say I'm surprised. I'll get there one way or another. This is just the start of my journey. As for my parents, I've been struggling with apathy towards them, and I find it difficult to feel anything more. My father has attempted to rebuild our relationship, but I just don't care anymore. That may sound harsh, but it's the truth. In my previous post, I mentioned wanting them to transfer the house into my name, but I haven't pursued that. I believe it was just an expression of anger at the time, an attempt to assert dominance at the outset of our conversations. But now I truly don't care about that house. I'd rather live in the house from Nightmare on Elm Street than there. It wouldn't change anything anyway. It can't turn back time or erase the choices they made. It's just the sad consequence of those choices. To anyone considering forgiving a cheater, I implore you not to. You're chasing a lost cause. Don't be the person desperately trying to extinguish the fires ignited by your cheating partner while they happily relight them. After everything that's happened and after reading various infidelity support forums in the past year, I feel stronger than ever. Not cutting your losses leads to a world of pain. A relevant story to share. Earlier this year, I had a frightening experience when I accidentally cut my trouser leg on a metal bin at work. I didn't realize it had caused a cut until I got home, and that night I felt strange. I woke up at 2 a.m. with a pulsating leg, feeling extremely unwell with double vision, dizziness, and fever chills. I suspected it might be sepsis, so I called an ambulance, but they told me it would take over 2 hours due to the Friday night in COVID. My mind was racing as I hyperventilated. Strangely, the only thing that calmed me was accepting that I might die. After that, I stopped feeling afraid. I've been thinking about it lately, and it's similar to dealing with cheating and betrayal. You have to accept that it's over, it's gone. If someone can betray you so deeply, is it worth fighting a losing battle? Is it worth the pain? I don't think so. I understand everyone has their own situations, especially if there are kids involved, but some battles are futile. Accepting that it's over makes things clearer. That's my perspective.